All right, welcome back to the fast break here on the Variety Sports Network. I'm your host, Shoot the Rock. It's been a minute, but we are back. We're going to be live here on Mondays going forward. Today we're live a little bit earlier at around 5:30 or so Central Time right now. Um, Most weeks here going forward, it's going to be probably closer to about 6:15, 6:30 or 6:15. So going to be here on the Monday slot now, just similar to last year. And same thing, like I said, while this year there's been more of a focus on college basketball, I am going to start talking a little bit more NBA, as that kind of starts to heat up here. We had the NBA All-Stars announced today. So we are going to end the show talking about that. But first, let's get to college basketball here. So today we're going to be talking about some of the more overrated and underrated teams here so far this season. So make sure to drop here down in the comments what teams you're thinking for both underrated and overrated here so far. So the first one on my list here, you can see we're going to start with the Florida Gators. And it might be, a little crazy here. You might say, how are the Florida Gators underrated? The defending national champions. How could that team be underrated? But honestly, they are because they just really did not get off to a very hot start this year, but now they've kind of bounced back. They're back up to 16th here in the rankings after knocking off Vanderbilt this past weekend. As you can see, there's my second team. So we'll talk about that here in a bit. So yeah, Florida, after losing their SEC opener to Missouri, is now won 4 straight games. 2 of them, or 3 of those games being ranked games versus Georgia, versus Tennessee, and then at Vanderbilt over the weekend, like I mentioned. Couple easier opponents, home games against LSU and Auburn coming up here this week. And then they head to South Carolina before playing Alabama at home. So you're looking at probably here what should be another 3, 4. Like Florida could go on a bit of a run here and kind of run through the SEC a little bit. I think, the SEC's pretty wide open this year, especially after being the best conference in college basketball last year. Definitely, I would say, is not this year. So despite Florida, getting off that slow start, I think they're really starting to round into form. So their go-to guys, Thomas Haw, he's averaging 17 points per game on the year, as well as 6.7 rebounds. And he's had some really big games in a lot of these wins here coming, recently, as well as, Alex Condon, who's averaging 14 points and 8 rebounds per game. So they're the two that are really, you kind of knew coming into the year. They played a big role on the national championship team last year. Now they once again are playing a big role here this year. But really what it has been is the 2 guards, Xavier Lee and Boogie Flan, have really started to come into their own. Kind of, we're an unknown here coming into the year, but especially this last game, Xavier Lee had a really big game here at against Vanderbilt, going for 20 points. I want to say that's his high mark here on the season. Had to wear the number 99 jersey after his jersey somehow did not make the trip, but he had a good game, so maybe just keep rocking the 99. And Xavier Lee, the game before, or 2 games before, in that, I forget who that was against. In that Tennessee game was really a breakout game for him. He went for 23 in that one, was the leading scorer for the Gators, first time here all year that he was. So if that backcourt can, really step up here, kind of continue this role they've been on as of late, they're definitely once again a team to watch here in March. And I mean, right now looking at it, I believe they'd be probably around a 3 or a 4 seed. Maybe even lower than that. Yeah, actually, on Bracket Matrix, so that's a consensus of like all these different bracketologists. They currently have Florida as a 5. And granted, 5-12 upsets usually pretty trendy pick, but like I said, I think if Florida keeps rolling, they're going to be more in that 3 to 4 range, maybe even all the way up to a 2 seed, but I would say probably the 3 to 4 seed range is what you're looking at, and that's going to be tough. Say an inconsistent team like a Michigan or something gets Florida in the Sweet 16. I'm probably taking the Gators in that one if they kind of keep playing how they've been playing. So, give me Florida as my first underrated team here this year. Then the second one, we're sticking here in the SEC, and sadly they did suffer 2 losses this week, one of those being to Florida, like I just mentioned. The Vanderbilt Commodores. they were one of the final 4 undefeated teams here in college basketball. Like I said, heading into this week before they do suffer two tough losses, so it does stink here a little bit that I'm recording this week and not last week because yeah, like I said, going to last week they were 16-0. They were top 10 in the country. Now they slide down to 15 after losing to Texas on the road and then Florida at home here. But they're a team that's really a lot of fun to watch, and they're built to be a successful team here in March. They're led by Tyler Tanner, averaging 17 points per game and 5 assists. And then Duke Miles averaging 17.3 points a game with 4 assists. So it takes, having good guards in March to be, to go deep in the tournament. Like that's usually a recipe for success. Plus, here on Ken Palm, they have the 4th rated offensive efficiency and then the 22nd rated defensive efficiency. So outstanding offense and a really, really solid defense as well. Like they're just overall a very good team. I have enjoyed watching them this year. Like I said, did suffer 2 losses this week, but let's see. Let me pull up their upcoming schedule here. At Arkansas. So once again, another tough game here on Tuesday. I think that should be a fun one to watch. Both teams that have like really good guards, like I mentioned, this backcourt here for Vanderbilt, and then you look at Darius Acuff for Arkansas. So that would definitely be one to tune into here on Tuesday. So they do have a little bit, tougher stretch coming up here. So it's going to be interesting to see how does this team rebound, just because, like I said, they were undefeated up until this point. Now they suffer 2 straight losses. Like I said, the Texas game definitely was an upset, but Texas picked up some nice. Texas is playing pretty well right now so far, so I'll give them that. And then Florida, who I just mentioned, underrated, defending national champions. Right now, my pick to win the SEC. So we'll see how Vanderbilt responds from that. But it's definitely a team to watch. Like I said, I think for a long time they weren't really getting talked about. Now I think if you follow college basketball, you know about this team. But if you're kind of more of a casual fan, just kind of starting to tune into college basketball here. Now that football's over, just kind of looking for something else to watch. And you might not recognize this Vanderbilt logo usually being towards the top. They're for real. They're legit. They're a lot of fun. So Vanderbilt, second team. The third one that I'm going to touch on here, and we'll pull up at St. Louis Sports here in the chat. Let's go Billikens. Yes, sir. It's the St. Louis Billikens, 17-1 here on the year, top of the A10. And they're led by, you might recognize this guy. Robbie Avila, the Dairy Bird. Well, I guess AJ Green's Dairy Bird. I forget what they called him when he was at Indiana State, but the goggled kid from Indiana State who's now at St. Louis. It's his second year here at St. Louis. Him and Coach Josh Schertz both came over from Indiana State. St. Louis also cracked the rankings for the first time this week, ranked 24th here in the country. Their only loss so far this year is a 1-point loss to Stanford, which, if I remember correctly, it was like kind of on a buzzer beater or like a late shot. So like this team could very easily be undefeated. I mean, really nice wins against Grand Canyon, San Francisco, VCU. They're one of these teams here you're going to see. Like they're not going to have any power conference wins, or say they beat Santa Clara too, who's a good team. But that's because like these power conference teams know that teams like St. Louis are a quality opponent, and it doesn't benefit the pot, which granted, it annoys me that they do this, but I kind of get why. It doesn't really benefit, a power conference team to play a St. Louis, just because, they lose, then you're losing to a team in an inferior conference. But I wish they would, because St. Louis is a really good team. I'd love to see them against, some of these better squads here in the country. I mean, Billikens ranked 29th on Ken Palm, the 41st offensive efficiency, 31st defensive. Like I said, Robbie Avila being their leader, like he's just really their go-to guy. Has had a really good year. He's currently averaging 12 points with 4 rebounds and 3 assists. So just kind of doing it all for them. Plus then Deion Brown is their go-to guard, averaging 11 points, also in double figures. And he's actually their leading rebounder with 6 rebounds a game. So they're a team that I think, they're going to be a lot of fun here in March. They should have, like I said, they kind of got screwed a couple years ago when they were at Indiana State. There was a lot of bid stealers that year, which kept Indiana State out of the tournament. But St. Louis, like they're projected to be a 9 seed right now. Like they could very easily be an 8 seed. They're going to be a difficult matchup for, like, I think they should at least win 1 game, if not 2. Like if they, in that 8-9 game, or maybe say they fall to a 10 or get all the way to 7, like they're going to cause a top seed some issues. And I think like it's going to be a lot of fun to watch them. And yeah, definitely a team to keep an eye on here. If you have not so far this year. Couple other ones here that I have. These two teams, not tournament teams necessarily right now, but TCU and Oklahoma State. In the Big 12. The Big 12 is the best conference in college basketball this year. Like if you only are going to watch one conference between now and March, like the Big 12 is 100% my pick. I just think it's just the top four teams. Like that's the thing. Everyone talks about the top four teams in Arizona, Houston, Iowa State, and BYU. Like they're all teams that can win the national championship, in my opinion. And they're very talented. But then people don't maybe touch on these lower teams in the conference as much. So TCU, they're just kind of a streaky team. That's the thing. If they can like be consistent, I think they could. Like right now, they are not projected to make the tournament, but if they can like be consistent, I think they could be, because they start their season out losing to New Orleans, but then like couple like weeks later, they almost beat Michigan. They beat Florida this year, a team who I already talked about. They beat Wisconsin, a team who has beat Michigan. But then they just in Big 12 play have not gone off to a great start here. 4 losses, losing 4 of 5. The Kansas game they just absolutely gave away. Like they should have won in Allen Fieldhouse and just then couldn't get the job done. So then now you're seeing, losing to Arizona, losing to BYU. Like I said, those top teams of the conference, losing at Utah this weekend in a close game. Like that's tough. But like the Big 12 is just so talented. They're going to get opportunities. So, they still have Iowa State. They still have Houston. Both of those teams, they play at home. Plus, you saw Iowa State. They lost this weekend to Cincinnati. So going on the road, not always an easy test. They still have a chance at Texas Tech this year. So sadly, that one's not a home game. But yeah, a lot of these top teams, they do play at home. They're gonna have opportunities to pick up some good wins. It's just gonna be, can they finish the job? Because so far they just have, like I said, the Michigan and the Kansas games were games they very easily could have won. Played both those teams really close. Like I said, the Kansas game they just absolutely gave away. But we'll see if they can turn around. I'm a little bit more confident in Oklahoma State. They're 14-4 on the year, granted 2-3 here in Big 12 play. Did pick up a nice win over the weekend against Kansas State. And they actually play TCU in their next game, so that should be a good one. And they beat a UCF team that was ranked. Lost to Texas Tech pretty badly. Lost to Iowa State by double digits, and then lost to Baylor. Like I just really have not been super impressed with Baylor. But they have nice wins over like South Florida is a decent American team. Northwestern, not a great Big Ten team, but power conference win. They've beaten Texas A&M, who's kind of also sneaky here in the SEC. So Oklahoma State team, I think is a little bit more talented than TCU. They're led by Anthony Roy, averaging 17 points per game. And then Parsa Follow with 15, as well as Victorious Miller with 14. So they have a couple different guys that have an ability to fill the bucket, and that's a recipe for success here in March. So Oklahoma State is maybe another one to keep an eye on. And then one like mid-major team I want to touch on, the Miami Redhawks. They also cracked the rankings this week at 25th. They are still undefeated at this point. You're one of the 3 remaining undefeated, 19-0, my apologies. They won a thriller against Buffalo over the weekend. Let me see their ranking here in KenPom. I forget what it was. But yeah, like I said, they finally cracked the AP top 25 this week. Coming in at 25th. Like I said, they're ranked 94th on KenPom, but they're another team. They just haven't gotten a lot of opportunities where, they were right there in the MAC title game last year. Lost to Akron. So they're one of those teams that, like, when you're that talented, power conference opponents are not going to want to play you. And, you can try to, schedule these other tough mid-major teams, but they might not always be as good as it looks like they're going to be coming into the season. And that's kind of what's happened here with Miami, Ohio. So that's why, their metrics aren't as high, but they do have the 76th offensive rating here on KenPom, 125th defense. So not super high, but now let me look what their projected seed would be. I want to say it was like around a like 11 or 12. Yeah, 11 seed, which for a MAC school would be very impressive to be that high of a seed. So their team, do want to shout them out, being here undefeated so far this season. Like I said, haven't really played anyone, but I don't think that's to any fault of their own. I think that's just kind of what has happened to them. And then I do have to shout out, one more um undefeated team here that I think, like I said, it's a team that if you have been watching and following college basketball this year, you're not going to say they're underrated. If anything, you might kind of say they're overrated a little bit. Um, but I just think for, maybe more casuals that are just kind of starting to tune into college basketball, just because this isn't a logo you're necessarily going to recognize. But the seventh ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers are also undefeated so far this year. And granted, yeah, a lot of their metrics don't stack up as great. It maybe shows maybe there's a little bit of luck involved in that undefeated season, but that's kind of what it takes, for them at this point of the year. Nebraska, like I always just think about, here tonight we got a national title game for football. If you would have told someone 20 years ago, or like back when my Indiana made the Final Four, which I want to say was like 2002, that in 23 years Indiana football would be in the national championship, and Nebraska basketball would be the undefeated last undefeated team here in the Big Ten, and probably gonna be a top two seed in the tournament, and not vice versa, I think people would have thought you were crazy. But that's just kind of the state of college athletics right now. NIL stuff can change very quickly. So Nebraska, they have not yet had to play Purdue or Michigan, who I do still think are the top two teams in the Big Ten here. They head to Michigan in a couple of weeks here. And then I want to say Purdue they get at home, but they've beaten Michigan State at home. They've won at Ohio State and Indiana, as well as at Northwestern, at Illinois on a buzzer beater. Just destroyed Wisconsin at home, destroyed Creighton at home. They're a really good team. They're a lot of fun to watch. They're led by Price Sanford and Renick Mast, as well as Braden Frager in their kind of front court. Those three guys all averaging 12 or more points per game, with Sanford averaging 16 and Mast averaging 15. And Mast also leading rebounder with 6. So they're a fun team to watch. Definitely, like I said, I think they're underrated just because of the logo, because it's Nebraska. You don't think of that as an undefeated team, but they're legit this year. So definitely check out the Cornhuskers if you have not yet. So if there's any other underrated teams that you guys think I'm missing, feel free to let me know down here in the comments. But we're gonna move over now to some of the teams that are kind of overrated, not living up to expectations. So first one we're gonna start with is Kentucky. And granted, like I said, this is one of these. If I did this last week, I think it would be maybe looking a little bit better, because now Kentucky came from behind to get a nice win against Tennessee. But Kentucky is 12-6 on the year. And really up in before that Tennessee game, they've kind of lost, excuse me, all their big matchups. They lost at Louisville, who's not looking as good as they were, back then. They lost against Michigan State in the Champions Classic. They lost against North Carolina. They got destroyed by Gonzaga. They did pick up wins against Indiana and St. John's, but as you can see here, St. John's is also in my kind of teams that aren't living up to the expectations tier. And then, yeah, like I said, lost to Alabama pretty handily to start SEC play. Plus, it took, like I said, they win at LSU this week, but it took a miracle, shot, as well as, an 18-point comeback to come from behind to win that one. But one thing that I think maybe here could be kind of turning things in Kentucky's favor is a little bit of addition by subtraction. So Jaden Quintains and Jahan Lowe have been kind of in and out of the lineup for Kentucky, guys that they kind of thought they were going to play a big role on this Wildcat team this year, that they just have not. They're just going to be out of the lineup. So it's, rather than kind of have to dealing with are they playing, are they not playing, they're just not playing. So I think that, can kind of help some guys, gel together a little bit. Like Colin Chandler's really impressed me. He's been playing better for Kentucky as of late, as well as Otega Owe. Like Otega Owe just did not have a good start to the year, but here, once the calendar's flipped here in SEC play, he's kind of looked like, the Otega Owe of last year and years past, where I thought, he's a good player, really good player, best player on this Kentucky team that can be their leader. And like I said, recently it's kind of looked like he could be that. So we'll see here. Maybe Kentucky can turn the page here, but I want to say right now on the bracket matrix, they're at like a 9 seed. Yeah, like a 10 seed. So they're gonna be a team that right now just they're gonna be a first weekend exit after I think some people thought with how open the SEC was this year that they could maybe be one of these contenders for the SEC and to go deep in March. And right now they just do not look like that. Maybe things will change here. There's still about 8 weeks until Selection Sunday, so maybe they can get things in gear. But yeah, as of right now, I have been pretty disappointed with Kentucky. Then the second one, like I mentioned, a team that Kentucky beat, St. John's. St. John's is another kind of disappointing team for me this year. They're 13-5 on the year. Have won 4 straight games now in the Big East, but I don't know. I just kind of thought they'd be far and away the second best team in the Big East, and that they've kind of struggled. Like they lose at home to Providence. Granted, nice wins at Butler, at Creighton, versus Marquette, who's pretty bad, and then at Villanova. That at Villanova one is impressive, just because Villanova's kind of been in the mix here for the second best team in the Big East, but they're currently now third after that loss to St. John's. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's the same thing. Just this team not really having a true point guard is kind of hurting them. I would say it's a thing that they just really didn't address in the transfer portal. Like they still have Zuby Ejiofor, who's been their beast. Like he's their leader in points, rebounds, and assists. He's literally their leader in every major category because he's a leader in steals and blocks too. Um, Bryce Hopkins is starting to come into his own a little bit more lately here. But yeah, like I don't know. St. John's was definitely a team that I would say coming into the year had Final Four aspirations, and they have just not lived up to that at all. I don't really think they're going to be anywhere near a Final Four team. Let me look at their projected seed. It's looking at like a 7 for St. John's, and just even last year's like a high seed, they got bounced the second round. So now here they are as a 7 seed. Like looking at some of those two seeds they'd match up with, I would like those teams way better than St. John's. So the Red Storm definitely an underwhelming team. I don't know. Maybe like I said, there's not a ton of expectation for them. If you're more of a casual fan, just because they really haven't been good in quite some time before last year. So now kind of regressing back to the mean a little bit here, but they're a team that I thought was poised to have another big year this year. And that just has not been the case at all. So St. John's is my second disappointing one. Then my third, kind of disappointing team this year, I'm going with North Carolina. And granted, there's a lot of time left here. Like I said, maybe things turn around, but North Carolina just lost at Cal and at Stanford this week and just really have not looked good at all. They're now 2-3 in SEC play, like way down here in the league. They're 14-4 overall. So granted, they doubled their losses just this week alone, but I don't know. I just really haven't been super impressed with them. Like they lose at SMU pretty handily too. Um, like we'll see. They get a chance to rebound at home here against Notre Dame this week, but then head to Virginia, which Virginia's honestly should be on there as an underrated team as well. They're all the way up to 14th in the country now. But yeah, it's Caleb Wilson and Henry Vasar are really good offensive players for North Carolina. Have kind of been their go-to guys, but just defensively they have not been very good. And especially now they are getting Seth Trimble back, but that's just the main thing is North Carolina is really struggling to guard. They're 53rd in defensive efficiency, so that's pretty low for considering how high. I mean, I guess they're only 36th in Ken Palm, but yeah, to be 53rd, like that's just not a team that's just not good enough, honestly, for North Carolina for how talented of a team they are. We'll see here now that Seth Trimble's like getting healthy again and is back. Can he maybe help that defensively? But I guess the problem is like those two guys are bigs. Like Seth Trimble, if the bigs can't guard, like the bigs are supposed to be the ones helping out the guards, not kind of the other way around. So we'll just kind of see here. Like right now, I'm not really super confident in this North Carolina team. This game at Virginia is going to be a big test here this weekend, where if they win that one, then maybe I'll be back in on them. But like Carolina lost to Duke 3 times last year. They very easily, I think, could get swept by Duke again. They don't play till February 7th, so still a couple weeks to maybe kind of turn things around. But yeah, if Caleb Wilson and Henry Vasar are just not playing well defensively like they haven't, they're going to have no shot against Cam Booz or any of those guys. So like I really thought Carolina should be up here contending for the ACC, and just what I've seen right now, it kind of seems like Duke should kind of easily win the ACC. Maybe like I said, maybe Virginia gives them some trouble. Louisville now that Michael Brown Jr. has been injured, has not been as good as, people would have hoped for. So, like the league should really be open for Carolina to be in the mix. But yeah, just right now they really aren't. And then final, disappointing team for me is Kansas. And like I said, if there's any other ones you guys want me to touch on, or ones that are disappointing you, feel free to drop them here in the chat. Kansas, they are 13-5 here on the year, 3-2 in Big East play. They are still ranked 19th. And pick up 2 wins, or picked up 2 wins last week, and like a really nice win at home against Iowa State where they just blew them out. Where, like I said, Iowa State was undefeated heading into that one. But before then, lost at UCF, lost at West Virginia, lost to Duke and UConn. And just like I said, there's four like top teams here in the Big 12. I kind of thought that Kansas, and I guess you could even say 5, like with Texas Tech, I kind of thought Kansas would be more competitive with those teams. And I guess they haven't really gotten a chance to play them and prove it yet. But like if I had to take, I'm taking all 5 of those teams over Kansas. I don't really think Kansas is going to be able to compete with them. I guess, well, they beat Iowa State, but they still then do have to play a return trip at Hilton Coliseum in Ames. We'll see how that one goes. They do host both Arizona and BYU, but they also have to go on the road to Texas Tech, to Arizona. That's the one downside with the Big 12 with these conferences all being so big now, is like a lot of these top teams, they only play once this year, which is kind of disappointing. And Kansas is another one similar, kind of like how I mentioned with Kentucky, like having guys in and out of the lineup. That's what when Darren Peterson's in and out of the lineup, like he has been, I just don't really feel like Kansas being able to get into a flow. Like, trust me, when he's in the lineup and he's, healthy, playing well, I think Darren Peterson is the best player in the country. I think he's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft this year just because of how good he is, when he's playing up to that full potential. But he's just been like dealing with cramping issues. He's just had games he's like hasn't played. It's a team. He's a guy that I honestly could just like see just kind of packing it in, being like, hey, I know I'm going to be a top 3 pick in the draft. Like, let me just go get ready for the draft, not really worry about that. So we'll see. It's kind of, if he plays, I think Kansas, can still be a team that goes deep in the tournament here. But if he doesn't, and it's kind of just continues this in and out of the lineup stuff like he has, right now is Kansas a 5 seed, but like I don't see them as a second weekend team. I feel like they probably lose in the first 2 rounds here, if Peterson's not, contributing the way that he should be. So if you guys have any other overrated, underrated teams, feel free to drop them here in the comments. Final thing here for college basketball, we are just going to go through some of the top teams in the country here, go through the poll came out this week, touch on some of these teams a little bit. So we'll start. Number 1 team, unanimous number 1, the Arizona Wildcats. Still undefeated here, 1 of 3. Like I mentioned, Miami and Nebraska earlier, but Arizona still undefeated, and now is by far, hands down, the number 1 team in the country. Got all 61 first place votes, 18-0. And really for Arizona, it's just been like they have so many different guys, both the front court and the back court. Like I was talking about this with one of my friends the other day. He was just like, what are your thoughts on like the top teams? And I was like, right now Arizona's the best. And he's like, gotcha. I haven't really watched much of them outside like Koa Pete. And I was like, Koa Pete's not even their best freshman. It's Braden Berries. Like he's averaging 14 points per game. Koa Pete is still the leading scorer, but I've just really been impressed with him. And that's what I'm saying. This Arizona team has the backcourt, like the guys where I think they could go on a deep March run. They're right now probably my pick to win the national championship, because Burry is paired with Jaden Bradley, who's averaging 14 points and 4 assists. And then, they have the front court guys too with Koa Pete, like I mentioned, as well as Montes Krivas and Tobe Awaka, who have been there for a while. So guys that like, this is just a really deep team. I think hands down, they are the number 1 team in the country right now. I agree with all the voters. Like I said, they're my pick to win the national championship at this moment. You can stamp that. And yeah, they're definitely a team. Tune into them if you've not been watching much of them. Like I said, I'll say to my buddy, and if you guys are like him, haven't been watching much of Arizona, definitely tune in. They play Cincinnati at home here on Wednesday. That could be a fun one. Like I said, Cincinnati just beat Iowa State. Kind of starting to turn things around. And then next week, like they kick off Big Monday. I think it's the second game. At BYU, that one should be a lot of fun. Then 2 weeks later, heading to Kansas. They do play BYU twice. They head to Houston in February. They play Kansas twice as well too. So lot of good games here in the Big 12. Like there's gonna be a lot of chances to get to watch them. So definitely tune into this Arizona team if you have not yet this year. Then the second team, the UConn Huskies. They're looking just like they did 2 years ago, 2 and 3 years ago, like back to the national championship kind of beat everyone level that they were. So yeah, they're 18-1. Their only loss is to Arizona. They squeaked out a couple wins here in the Big East, but other than that, they've kind of rolled. Like I said, the Providence game went to overtime, but that one was like one. It looked like they were gonna get upset. They've struggled like playing at Providence in the past. But they were able to come back in that one, win in overtime. So nice win there. They won at Seton Hall, somewhere that Dan Hurley either hadn't won ever or in like 5 years, something like that. So they win there, and Seton Hall was ranked in that match. Granted, after losing to UConn, they then also lost to Butler this week. So yeah, picking up nice wins there, and just kind of like I mentioned with earlier, the Big East just is not very good this year. Where if UConn went undefeated in the Big East, granted, it's very tough to do, but it wouldn't surprise me. Like honestly, if this team loses two or more games in the Big East at this point, I'm be surprised. Just because, like I said, I think they've gotten through a lot of their like trap spots, like at Providence, at Seton Hall. They do have to head to Creighton on a Saturday night in a couple weeks. Maybe that could be one, but every other spot, like I'm not too worried. Like they do play St. John's in the Garden, but honestly, like UConn fans travel there. Like that's not going to be some insane like St. John's home atmosphere. So definitely, UConn's be a team that I think can win the national title as well. I think they're going to be in the Final Four. I'd honestly love to see like a UConn Arizona rematch. As much as sometimes Dan Hurley drives me crazy, he's a really good coach. So UConn, number 2 team here. Number 3 is Michigan. They did suffer their first defeat at Wisconsin or at home against Wisconsin last Saturday. But they're now 16-1, bounced back from that with wins over Washington and Oregon. On the road, not easy to go across country, especially after kind of suffering a heartbreaking loss like that. But they bounced back with 2 pretty sound wins. I feel like I've talked about Michigan on here, a good amount. Yaxel Lendenberg, probably one of my favorite players to watch. I'm glad that now he's at a big school where a lot more people get to watch him. So with him, Morez Johnson, Andy Marr, like they have really good bigs. And then Elliot Cadeau's honestly been playing pretty well as of late too. So if him and Namari Burnett like can kind of be those go-to guards for Michigan, they're I think could be poised for a deep run. Just the thing is, Michigan has been very inconsistent. You kind of saw it last week with they survive a Penn State team who's not very good, and then lose to Wisconsin. Plus, like I mentioned earlier, like they played TCU close. They've had a couple other like games, like Wake Forest was a bit of a scare early in the year as well. But then, they have the games where they beat Gonzaga by 40. So it's just kind of what Michigan do we get? Do we get this like beat Gonzaga by 40 Michigan, or do we get we lose to Wisconsin because, teams kind of like a Wisconsin, like didn't let Michigan get the shots they wanted, like made them take tough shots. So we'll kind of see there. Then 4th is Purdue. That's probably the Big Ten team I'm higher on. They're 17-1 now on the year. After picking up wins, the Iowa game was close this week, and then had to go to USC, which, like I said, never easy going across country. We were able to pick up the win behind a big game from Braden Smith. He's been there forever. And that's just the thing where I'm really confident in this Purdue team. Why I like them a little bit more. It's like their big 3: Braden Smith, Trey Kaufman, Wren, and Fletcher Lawyer have all been there together. They've been playing. They were on the national championship team, a team that wins the national championship game 2 years ago. Plus, Oscar Clough, transfer from South Dakota State, is really coming to his own, averaging 12 points and 8 rebounds. He's like been a really dominant big. He's transitioned to the Big Ten pretty well here. So I think they're a team. Plus, on you throw in Daniel Jacobson is another big that's been really solid for him. They're a team that 1 through 5 have talented players. Like I said, and more just March experience players. So for that reason, I really do like Purdue more than Michigan. I kind of think they're my pick to win the Big Ten, or at least, if they don't win the Big Ten, I think they'll probably end up going deeper here in March than Michigan. And then the 5th team here, we'll touch on them quickly. Duke Blue Devils, 17-1 here. Like I mentioned, kind of running away with the ACC. Them and Clemson, only undefeated teams in the ACC so far. They're 17-1 on the year. Really should be undefeated. Just gave away that game against Texas Tech. But really, I have been impressed with Duke as of late. Like the Stanford win, they won by 30 over the weekend. And it was just by far like the most complete game that Duke's played all year. They had a really nice, like kind of cruised in the second half against Cal, as well as, nice wins against SMU and Louisville the week before, like 2 ranked teams. So Blue Devils are playing really well. And it's really just been that guys have kind of stepped up around Cam Boozer. Like Cam Boozer is their leader in points, rebounds, and assists, but Isaiah Evans has really come into his own lately. He's averaging 14 points per game. He's been shooting the ball at a lot better clip lately. Patrick Ngongba has been, another like go-to big for this Blue Devil team. Plus, then you throw in like Caleb Foster and Caden Boozer, who have had some solid performances. Just can they do it consistently is going to be a big thing. So if they can get like solid guard play out of those, that's just kind of my little bit of hesitance here with Duke. Is I don't know if they have the guard play to go far and march. They have, the player that's going to be the best player on the floor in pretty much every game he plays, unless he faces like a. But even like, Cam Boozer just as good as AJ DeBansa and Darren Peterson, in my opinion. So I think, he's a guy who can go toe to toe with those guys. So watch out for this Duke team. I think, they're once again probably poised for another deep March run. Granted, it might end in a painful collapse like the last couple of years. We'll see. But yeah, I kind of think once again they're going to run through the ACC. They do once again have another similar last year when they played Illinois, but they beat Illinois by 40 in that game, where they're playing like a Big Ten non-conference game here in the middle of the year. They head to or play Michigan and Washington, D.C. on February 21st. That should be a fun one. I think that's probably going to be their toughest test here the rest of the series. Like I said, they've already beat Louisville on the road. They host Louisville and then do still have the 2 games against Carolina. Virginia is a home game this year. They don't play them twice. And then I don't think and then Clemson's also a home game. So definitely have kind of already gotten their 2, some of their tougher games out of the way already. So I'm high on this Duke team, and think they're a team poised, like I said, poised for another deep run. All right, so that's going to wrap up the college basketball talk. We'll end the show here with just a little bit of NBA, because like I said, the NBA is starting to heat up here now that once the NFL ends, kind of looking for more stuff to watch here. I do kind of tune into the NBA a little bit more, but we had the NBA All-Star starters announced today, so it's going to be a little bit of a weird format this year. Just NBC with it being their first All-Star game, trying to lean into the, kind of Olympics aspects. The Olympics are going to be going on at the same time here as the All-Star game. So it's going to be, once again, they're doing a tournament of this year. Instead of 4 teams, going to be 3 teams of 8, and then just do like every team plays each other once, and then like a championship fourth quarter. So that way it will be more basketball and less Mr. Beast like last year. So the starters here in the West, you have Shea, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, and Victor Wembanyama. And then the East, once it loads here, we have... See, I don't know why. It was like hard to just find an article of this. I just got to pull it up here on Twitter. I'm trying to find it. We got Jalen Brunson, it appears. Like, why can I not just find one tweet of this? This is really annoying. Here we go. ESPN All-Star starters. Sorry, I should have pulled this up before. I kind of forgot I was going to talk about this. All right, there we go. And then in the East, we got Jalen Brunson, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Brown, Giannis, and Tyrese Maxey. So let me know your guys' thoughts on those starters. And kind of, who maybe did they, miss out on? Who did they not, one thing I do think is interesting is this, LeBron has been an all-star for 21 straight years, not named a starter. I want to say he was like a starter in just about every single one of those years, if not all 21. Like I want to say at least like 19 or 20 of the years he was named a starter. So there's like a chance I don't think he will. They'll definitely find some way to get him on the roster, but kind of a chance here that LeBron might not be an all-star this year. Kind of interesting. Then true here, we'll just look at like the standings quickly. So little bit of a surprise here, but the Detroit Pistons are the number one team in the East and like running away with it. 30-10 on the year, 4.5 game lead on Boston, who's kind of been surprising after their slow start. Those two teams are about to go in action here. I want to say at like 7 on NBC tonight, so that should be a fun one. Tune into that one if you're looking for something other than the national championship to watch tonight. And then out west, it's OKC, who've just kind of dominated. They're 36-8. Granted, at one point it was looking like maybe they were going to break the Warriors wins record this year. Not going to happen. They've come back down to earth. The Spurs beating them like 3 times in a span of 8 days definitely helped that. Spurs second, but still 6 games back here in the Western Conference. With then teams like Denver and then Minnesota not as close behind, but Denver definitely kind of on their tail a little bit at 29-14. However, Denver kind of not struggling, but no Jokic, so it's been a bit tougher going. He's still out for a little bit here. And then just kind of last thing, we've had a couple trades. So Trae Young already traded from the Hawks to the Wizards. We have, Ja potentially kind of seems to want out of Memphis. Giannis is kind of a back and forth. So let me know if you guys think any of those guys will get traded. I think Ja for sure will, and I think that makes sense. Memphis is currently out of a play-in spot here. They're 11th in the West. And just really this Ja era, just between his kind of off the court shenanigans and stuff like that, really I don't think has gone as well as they were hoping. So would not be surprised to see the Grizzlies move on from him. Giannis, on the other hand, I really think Giannis is going to stick in Milwaukee. As weird as kind of that whole saga has been, he has said that he wants to be a Buck. And then, granted, I think it's like weird that he's like, I can't control my management. It's like, you can, but they're currently, also in 11th, but like they're 1 game out of it. And also just, I think the East is very open this year. Like I said, like it's kind of surprising. Like Detroit, top team in the East. You got Boston in second, who no Jason Tatum, do still have Jaylen Brown. The Knicks are third, who've had a really good year, but then you're looking like Toronto fourth. Like I definitely think like the Bucks are a team that they get Giannis healthy, maybe get another guy around him. Like I do think the Bucks like very much still can compete here in the East. So I think Giannis sticks around, but I think Ja gets traded. We still got a couple more weeks here till the trade deadline. Like I know Jonathan Kuminga like demanded a trade as well, because there was like recently, like January, whatever it is, I think like January 15th or something is a day that a lot of the guys, it's like December 15th and January 15th are guys that like now pretty much like anyone in the league is open to be traded unless they got like a no movement clause. So definitely think we'll see some trades. So, but all right, that's going to wrap it up here for the fast break this week. Want to thank you guys for tuning in. So like I mentioned, we're going to be here on Mondays going forward. That's what we did last year. I think that just kind of works best. I tried to get a little too tricky moving around the different days this year. So I'm just going to stick with what works. We're going to stick here with Mondays. Like I said, mainly going to be focused on college basketball, but going to mix in a little bit of NBA talk here as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see y'all next week. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the Variety Sports Network here, just because, as well as the fast break every week. Brandon's been doing a great job with a lot of the NFL videos and even some college football videos. The 7th inning stretch has been killing it, especially, baseball season is about to get started here. So a lot of great content here on the channel. So make sure to subscribe, like the video, comment, your takes, anything that I might have missed, overrated teams, underrated teams, guys who are going to get traded here in the NBA, guys who should have been all-star starters. Let me know, and I'll see y'all next week. Peace.